So Crimson Desert just hit 5 million copies sold. That's huge, and we have no question. But here's what's way more interesting than the number itself. Most games that sell like this do it up front, and then the numbers just flatten out. Not this one. And that's what I want to dig into today. Alright, let's get into it. Look, when a game moves 2 million units in a single day, you know it's going to be big. But 5 million in less than a month? That's a different beast entirely. Here's what I find nuts though. This doesn't feel like a game that already hit its ceiling and is just coasting on launch hype. It feels like one that's still building momentum, and the numbers back that up. Pearl Abyss dropped this thing on March 19th, and within 2 weeks they'd already cranked out over 4 million sales. Now here we are barely into April and they just smashed 5 million. What's wild is that most open world RPGs see their sales curve flatten hard after the first week. People buy it, beat it, move on. But Crimson Desert's sales trajectory is still climbing, and that's not normal. Like at all. That tells me the game isn't just surviving off pre-launch marketing or streamer hype, it's actually pulling in new players weeks after launch, which means something else is driving that growth, something that doesn't come from a press release or a fancy trailer. And honestly, that's way more impressive than the number itself. So yeah, 5 million copies. But ask me again in a month and I bet we're having a different conversation, because this train ain't stopping anytime soon. And the best part? The game's foundation is so solid that even if the hype machine slows down, the design keeps people coming back. So how exactly is this game still growing? Simple. Word of mouth, not paid ads, not sponsored streams, not some overblown marketing campaign, just players telling other players, hey, you gotta see this. I've seen it happen in my own feed. Someone posts a clip of their character doing something completely unhinged, and suddenly everyone's asking what game that is. The thing is, Crimson Desert isn't easy to explain. You can't just say it's an open-world action RPG and call it a day, because that describes like 50 other games. What you can do is show someone a 30-second video of a player getting swallowed by a giant whale or using a flagpole to pole vault across a river, and that sells the game faster than any trailer ever could. Pearl Abyss isn't out here running some massive ad campaign right now. They don't need to. The players are doing the marketing for free, just by playing the game and sharing their weird, wild, and sometimes completely broken experiences. And because those experiences feel personal, not scripted, they hit different. You watch a dev diary and you're like, cool, nice graphics. You watch your friend accidentally launch a horse off a cliff and you're like, I need to try that. That's the difference. That's why the game keeps pulling in new people even after launch. It's not being sold, it's being shared. Here's the real secret sauce though. Crimson Desert creates these moments that are genuinely hard to describe. Like, you can't just tell someone why it's fun, you have to show them. And that creates this weird, almost viral cycle where every player becomes a walking advertisement just by talking about their playthrough. Think about it. You finish a session and you're telling your friends about the time you tried to climb a mountain and ended up in a cave with a boss you weren't ready for. Or the time you spent an hour just messing with the physics engine and accidentally discovered a new traversal trick. Those aren't scripted moments. Those are yours. And because everyone plays differently, everyone's got a different story. That's not something you can fake. It's something the game systems just naturally produce. So when someone asks, is Crimson Desert worth it? You don't give them a review score, you send them a clip. And that clip makes them curious. And that curiosity leads to a purchase. And then they start generating their own clips and the whole thing just feeds itself. That's the loop right there. The game doesn't need hype, it needs players, and it's getting them one weird moment at a time. Even better, this doesn't require a big content push from the devs. It's baked into the design. All they had to do was build a sandbox where weird stuff can happen and then get out of the way. Because most single-player games have a shelf life. You play through the story, maybe do some side quests, and then you're done. Uninstall, move on, whatever. Crimson Desert isn't built like that, and I think that's a big part of why it's still pulling numbers weeks after launch. The game isn't just a linear path from start to finish, it's a systems-driven sandbox where the fun comes from experimenting, not just checking boxes. You can approach combat a dozen different ways. You can ignore the main quest for hours just exploring and seeing what happens. And because the physics and AI can produce unexpected outcomes, no two playthroughs feel exactly the same. That's huge. That's the kind of design that keeps people coming back even after they've seen the credits roll. Contrast that with your typical open world game, where once you've cleared all the map markers, there's nothing left to do. Crimson Desert doesn't have that problem because it's not relying solely on scripted content. It's relying on systems that create emergent moments. And those don't run out. You can't exhaust them because they're not a finite resource. They're just the result of putting a bunch of complex systems together and seeing what happens. So, yeah, you can finish the story, but the game isn't finished with you, not even close. And that's exactly why people are still talking about it, still playing it, still convincing their friends to jump in. It's got legs, and those legs are longer than most games in this genre. Here's where a lot of games drop the ball. They launch, maybe fix a few bugs, and then go quiet while everyone loses interest. Not Crimson Desert. Pearl Abyss has been pumping out patches at a ridiculous pace, and not just minor tweaks either. We're talking game-changing updates that actually address what players are complaining about. Take the latest patch, for example. Added 5 summonable mounts, cut down loading times for fast travel and respawns, and tightened up the controls. That's not a hotfix. That's a meaningful improvement that directly responds to community feedback. And because those updates dropped fast, like within the first 2 weeks fast, the game's reputation turned around almost immediately. Steam reviews went from mixed to very positive. Player counts jumped, and that momentum just kept building. Now they're talking about adding multiple difficulty modes, a boss replay system, and more control optimizations in the coming months. That's not a studio that's done with the game. That's a studio that's treating it like a live service, except without the battle passes and microtransactions. Just good old-fashioned support. And honestly, that's rare. Most devs ship a single-player game and move on to the next project. Pearl Abyss is sticking with this one, and it's paying off. The sales numbers don't lie. Neither do the player counts. The updates are working, and the game is better for it. Now let's talk about the design philosophy for a second, because I think it explains a lot about why people aren't putting this game down. Crimson Desert isn't designed to be finished quickly. It's not one of those games where you can blast through the main story in 20 hours and call it a day. The systems encourage experimentation, and the game actively rewards you for spending time with it. The more you play, the more you discover. The more you discover, the more you want to keep playing. That's a feedback loop that a lot of open-world games miss. They give you a checklist and expect you to feel satisfied when it's done. Crimson Desert gives you a sandbox and trusts you to find your own fun. And because the progression systems are deep and the combat has real variety, you're not just grinding for the sake of grinding, you're actually getting better at the game, learning new strategies, finding new ways to break encounters. That feels good. That keeps you around. The endgame is proof of that. People aren't just finishing the story and quitting. They're diving into fashion builds, cosplaying as other characters, pushing the limits of what the game can do. That's not something you see in a game that people are bored with. That's the sign of a community that's still engaged, still creating, still playing, and that's exactly what Pearl Abyss was aiming for. A game that doesn't just sell well, a game that stays alive. And you want to know why this game is everywhere on social media? Look at the streamers. Crimson Desert is basically a content generation machine. The gameplay is unpredictable, the physics are janky in the best way, and there's always something wild happening that you didn't expect. That's gold for anyone who streams or makes clips. A scripted, linear game gives you the same experience everyone else had. Crimson Desert gives you your own experience, and that's what people want to watch. Take the clip where a player used a raccoon to, well, let's just say the raccoon didn't make it. Or the guy who discovered you can pole vault with a flagpole. Or the person who sailed to the edge of the map and got swallowed by a giant whale. Those aren't scripted events. Those are emergent moments that happened because the game systems allowed them to. And when a streamer captures something like that on camera, it goes viral. Because nobody's seen it before. And that's the key. Crimson Desert isn't just watchable, it's endlessly watchable because you never know what's going to happen next. That keeps viewers engaged, keeps clips circulating, and keeps new players curious. It's a cycle that feeds itself, and streamers are right at the center of it. They're not just playing the game, they're showing it off. And that free advertising is worth more than any marketing budget could buy. But let's be real for a second. The open-world action RPG genre is crowded. Like, extremely crowded. You've got the heavy hitters, the wannabes, the also-rans. It's hard to stand out, but Crimson Desert does, and I think it's because the game isn't trying to hold your hand. There's less hand-holding, more reactive systems, and a general sense that the game expects you to figure things out on your own. That's refreshing. A lot of modern open-world games treat you like you're going to get lost if they don't put a marker on everything. Crimson Desert trusts you to explore, to experiment, to fail, and that makes the successes feel earned. Plus, the combat just hits different. It's weighty, it's expressive, and it gives you options. You can go in swinging a giant sword, or you can get creative with the environment, or you can just punch your way through encounters barehanded if that's your style. That level of freedom isn't common. Most games funnel you into a specific playstyle. Crimson Desert says, do whatever you want, and we'll see what happens. That's a design choice that sets it apart, and in a genre full of games that all start to blur together after a while, standing out is half the battle. Crimson Desert isn't just another open-world game. It's its own thing, and people are responding to that. So here's where all these pieces come together. More players means more discoveries. More discoveries means more clips and content. More content means more people hear about the game. And more people hearing about it means more players. That's the unstoppable loop, and it's already happening. You can see it in the Steam numbers. The game hit a concurrent player peak of over 250,000 almost 2 weeks after launch, which is actually higher than its launch day peak. That almost never happens. Usually the player count trends downward after the first weekend. But Crimson Desert went up. Because people were still buying it, still playing it, still telling their friends about it. And because the updates kept improving the experience, the reviews turned around, which made even more people willing to give it a shot. It's a snowball effect, plain and simple, and the crazy part is, it didn't require some massive marketing push or a celebrity endorsement. It just required a good game that got better over time and a community that was excited to share it. That's the kind of momentum you can't buy, you can only earn it. And Pearl Abyss earned it. The question now isn't whether the game will keep selling. The question is, how high can it go? Because right now there's no sign of it slowing down. Bottom line, Crimson Desert has something that most games in this genre don't, a foundation that can support long-term growth. The player base is active, the systems are deep enough to keep people experimenting, and the dev team is actually listening to feedback and acting on it. That's a rare combination. Even if the hype cycle eventually cools down, the game itself will keep people around. Because it's not built on flashy marketing or a celebrity cameo, it's built on solid gameplay, emergent moments, and a community that genuinely enjoys sharing what they find. That doesn't go away overnight. So yeah, 5 million copies is impressive, but it's not the achievement, it's the starting point. The real story is what happens next, and if the past few weeks are any indication, this game is going to be in the conversation for a long time. Not because it sold well out of the gate, but because it's still selling well, still getting updates, still generating clips, and still pulling in new players. That's what Unstoppable looks like, and honestly, I'm here for it. Anyway, that's where we're at with this one, so if you've been sleeping on Crimson Desert, maybe now's the time to check it out. Or don't. I'm not your mom. But I will say, the clips don't lie. Catch you in the next one.